We need more time. That is the message that several countries are bringing to an emergency G7 meeting today as Western allies struggle to evacuate people from Afghanistan. Germany, France and the UK are all pushing the US for an extension to its August 31st departure deadline. But the Taliban say they have just 7 days to leave Kabul airport, where thousands of Afghans are still waiting to escape.
These sisters are preparing to leave Kabul airport on a flight to the UK.
Thank you.
They are travelling with their father, who is seeking refuge from the Taliban.
And do you think the Taliban would have killed you?
Yes.
No doubt.
Yes, they're going to kill me. Then, yeah. This was like everybody was scared. That's what they're going to do. And the first time they're telling to the people that we're going to do nothing for everybody, but nobody knows.
The family was lucky to escape when they could. International military personnel are struggling to complete evacuations before the deadline of August 31st, when remaining US troops are supposed to leave Afghanistan.
We know and are linked very closely with Central Command on potential operations to close out the mission by the 31st. That was the direction given by the President, and we're committed to do that. And my commitment is to ensure that airlift is never the constraint to execute those operations. We are pushing the limits to do everything we can to get every single evacuee out of Kabul.
The evacuations are set to be a key topic of discussion at a special G7 meeting on Afghanistan on Tuesday. The UK and the European Union have called on the US to delay its withdrawal, and Germany is pushing for the airport to remain open after the US Army leaves. We are in talks with the US and Turkey in order to keep Kabul airport operational to make civilian evacuations possible.
Kabuls für das Ausfliegen dieser Personen zu ermöglichen.
The Taliban have warned that any delay in the international exit would be met with unspecified consequences.
President Biden announced this agreement that until 31st of August they would withdraw all their military forces. So if they extend it, that means they are extending occupation.
For tens of thousands of people in Afghanistan, fear of militant rule is driving them to try to get out. But with very little time left to evacuate, it seems the US will need to make a deal with the Taliban to ensure they can leave.
And for more, let's cross straight now to journalist Franz Marti in Kabul. France, US President Joe Biden is set to decide within the next 24 hours whether to extend this timeline for withdrawal. Has this increased the sense of desperation in Kabul, especially among Afghans who are wanting to leave?
I don't think it had that much of a significant impact. It might have increased the desperation a bit, but the desperation was already like sky high during the past few days. So already during the past few days, the feeling was like time is running out. If I don't get out now, I can't anymore. And this was also what this panic, this feeling of desperation was also what like contributed to the chaos at the airport. People going there, not having the right documentation, and just like hoping to get somehow on a plane, or they're going there with the right things, but not managing to get in, despite having done everything correctly. So yeah, the situation was already dire before. And couldn't get much worse.
Now, the Taliban are warning of consequences if Biden does extend the withdrawal deadline, which would be 1 week from today. What could the Taliban possibly do if the deadline does get extended?
I mean, the Taliban control Kabul. There's only a small contingent at Kabul airport. Of course, they could, in theory, take drastic measures, attacking, trying to shut the American operation down. However, it's very important to note that one has to differentiate between Taliban rhetoric and Taliban actions. For example, this spring, the Taliban in their propaganda also were very adamant that U.S. troops have to be out by 1st of May, a date that was conditionally set in the U.S. Taliban agreement. And also there they have implied that the overstay would be followed by consequences. But then the realpolitik was this: the Taliban decided it's not a good idea to shoot at the U.S. if they're indeed on their way out, and then they kind of did nothing, as at least they didn't attack U.S. forces, and something similar could happen now. This is speculation, though.
Now, tens of thousands of people have, of course, been evacuated from the Afghan capital, but obviously the pressure is on now to get more people out. You've said that the levels of desperation can't really get much worse. How are things at and around the airport right now?
I have been in touch with someone who has conducted the evacuation yesterday night. And he today in the morning told me that it is still chaotic scenes, tragic scenes, people breaking down, people handing their babies over to forces to somehow get them in. So really still heartbreaking scenes, still a lot of people who desperately try to get out. In this regard, I think it is important, though, to also say that inside the city, the situation is relatively calm. That doesn't mean that people are happy or everything is fine. It just means that a much larger number than the tens of thousands at the airport stay here, whether deliberately or if they kind of have resigned to the fact that they have no reasonable way out, and they stay behind and try to sort out their life now as quietly, as calmly as possible.
Franz Marti, thank you for your reporting from Kabul. Now, many at-risk Afghans are still waiting to be evacuated from Kabul airport. They're mainly interpreters or contractors who worked for US, German or other NATO forces. But some have already made it out. In our next report, we meet two people who worked for the German army in Mazar-e-Sharif. They and their families travelled to Germany last month at their own expense. DW's Sylvia Wasserman picks up their story from here.
These two men are too scared to show their faces. They're not afraid for their own safety, but that of their loved ones in Afghanistan. We will call them Sultan and Nabi for security reasons. They worked for the Bundeswehr in the northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif. Now the only contact they have with their native country is by phone.
My family is in deep danger right now, so I'm really concerned about them, about their life, about their everything. Because as the Taliban find them, or as the Taliban know that I have worked with internationals for many, many years and support them, then they will, of course, find them and seize them as hostages.
In an interview with DW, the two men warned that the Taliban cannot be trusted.
Everyone knows Taliban, and Taliban is not they are not really in normal people. They are just killing people like butchers, and we cannot believe them.
The men, along with their wives and children, are now safe at this refugee shelter in Berlin. But their parents, siblings and friends have not received visas.
I hope this is kind of a responsibility for the countries that we work for. They should bring all our families that they are left behind in Afghanistan, because Taliban will kill them all.
The fact that they made it to Germany is little consolation to them, given the current situation.
Of course, I'm here right now safe, but my mind is not safe, my heart is not safe. So everybody's in there, so if my family is there, then it means that I'm there. So they are in deep danger right now.
They talk to their relatives in Afghanistan every day. Nothing has happened to anyone so far, and they can only hope that it stays that way.
As thousands try to flee Afghanistan, there are fears the Taliban could roll back the freedoms and rights of Afghan women and girls, in particular, who remain behind. Under previous Taliban rule, women were not allowed to work in jobs that put them in contact with men. But recent images of a female news anchor interviewing a Taliban spokesman live on air suggest the group might be pushing a more moderate image to the outside world. And some girls have reportedly returned to school this week. This was also forbidden under the Taliban's previous regime. However, it's not clear if this will last. And we're joined now by Samira Hamidi, Amnesty International's campaigner, who has worked extensively to improve women's rights in Afghanistan. And she founded an organisation that aims to empower Afghan women. And she joins us now from the Sri Lankan capital, Colombo. Samira, welcome to DW. Thanks so much for talking to us. Can you tell us what is life like for women and girls in Afghanistan right now?
Women and girls are extremely concerned about the future. They are, of course, what I'm hearing and what we are hearing through the news is that Taliban have not yet specifically discussed how they will be allowing women to engage and to be included. But based on their meetings and based on their discussions that are happening in the last 1 week, we see a clear absence of women, especially women leaders, especially those women who were part of different processes in Afghanistan. And that clearly passes a message that Taliban are not open to women's engagement and participation.
Samira, there are so many fears, obviously, that women are facing at the moment. Would you say that with the Taliban now in power, education, will women once again be denied the right to education?
Absolutely, because I just want to reflect on some of the districts that Taliban had power or had in their control during past governments. Women were abandoned from societal prisons, and no girls' schools were open. Girls were not allowed to go and study, and that is a serious matter of concern that they have not changed. They have not become moderate. What they are showing right now is part of a propaganda that they just would like to say that we are open and we will be allowing women and girls to be meaningfully engaged, to seek education. But time will show us, and they win the trust of people in Afghanistan, especially women and girls who have suffered badly from them.
Now, thousands of Afghans have, of course, managed to leave the country, many with just the most basic of belongings. Can you tell us what future are they facing?
This is a very troubling time for a lot of people who have decided to leave Afghanistan and who have no choice. Among them are journalists, women activists, human rights defenders who are exposed to the direct persecution for their human rights work. They have received threats and warnings in the past from the Taliban. The future is very unclear for them, honestly. Based on what we are hearing from international community, that they are welcoming, these groups of people, and they have plans for them. I really hope that there will be a culture of acceptance for them. They will have opportunities to still work for Afghanistan. They will have opportunities to heal, because what they have gone through until where they have reached today is very traumatizing. I am talking to some of them, and it is very, very traumatizing.
Samira Hamidi, Amnesty International South Asia campaigner, thank you so much for your time.